Cross Iron Mills.
Okay, so it is 8:30, and I am going to call the council meeting of Tuesday, April 23rd, 2024 to order. We have an agenda in front of us, and we are going to do some adjustments to that agenda. So we are going to defer item 4.1, the Hamlet of Huxley Wastewater Study, to our next council meeting. And we are also going to remove closed session item 11.1, advice from officials, section 24. Are there any other changes, additions to the agenda that's in front of us? Councillor Christie.
If not, I'll move the agenda as amended.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve the agenda as amended. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. The first item of business on our agenda this morning is 3.1. We have a delegation from BDO Canada on the financial statements, I believe, is where we're going to be. Item 6.1, 2023 audited financial statements. And welcome. I was saying that earlier that anybody who appeared on this agenda today had to be a relatively brave person, so.
I'll take that with a grain of salt, I guess. I appreciate it, though. It's nice to see everybody again.
So I guess my first question would be is, do you need introductions of the people who are here?
Yeah, so my name is Mitchell Kennedy. I'll give you a funny little story. So I've been in public practice for about 13 years. And one of my very first engagements I ever did was actually being a preparer for the Kneehill County audit. So I got a lot of familiarity and continuity with the municipality. So a lot of familiar faces on council. So it's good to see. But yeah, so I'm Mitchell Kennedy. I'm the senior manager on the audit this year. So I'll be running you guys through the financial statements. And if you have any questions at any point as I kind of go through these, feel free to stop me and then I can try to address anything that you might have. So I'm going to start off with the audit report, but before I go into the...
Just before you do that, you do know all of us, or do you need us to introduce ourselves to you as well, Mitchell?
I know most of you, but if you want to go around, that'd be great too.
Okay, so maybe that would not be a bad thing for us to do, just
Sure.
so, just refresh your memory, although our nameplates are in front of us, but
Yeah.
I'll start with Councillor Penner then.
Good morning, Mitch. Debbie Penna, Division 2.
Good morning, Faye McGee, Division 1.
Carrie Phillips, Division 4.
Morning, Mitchell. Ken King, Division 7.
Morning, Mitchell. I don't believe we've ever met.
Good morning, Lorley Michelle Cunningham, Division 5. Thanks for coming.
Good morning. You got just about as much history here as Jerry's got, so we'll see who's right. Wade Christie, Division 6.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. Hogan.
Morning, Mitch.
Hey.
Morning, Kevin Gannon, Director of Community Services.
Morning, Mitchell. Mike Zier, Director of Infrastructure.
Nice to meet everybody.
We met this morning, so he's
Yep.
familiar, but Teresa Cochran, Director of Corporate Services.
So thanks for being here today, Mitchell. We do appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
And
And it's
so-
good to see you guys as well.
Yeah, just take your time and bring to us the information you have for us. Thank you.
Yep. So there's been two major changes to the public sector accounting world this year. Really, there's only one major change that truly impacts this municipality. The other one is just more of a disclosure thing, and it hasn't really changed much for the municipality, as it's more of a reader contextual information related to risks. And those two changes are Section 3280, which is your asset retirement obligation. So last year, there was a standard called 3270, which was specifically for landfill remediation reclamation liabilities. That specific section ended in 23 for municipalities, and it effectively got rolled into asset retirement obligations. So what that means is there's a little bit of variance in terms of how it's calculated. So under 3270, you were expected to look at landfill liabilities based off of utilization or capacity, where now under asset retirement obligations, you effectively throw that out the window and you look at your estimated value of what your liability is going to be. And then there's going to be a new line item. I'll talk about it later. It's literally called asset retirement obligations, and in there it's going to encompass things like your landfill liability now, as well as your gravel reclamation liability and other asset retirement obligations as well. And there's a whole bunch of note disclosures that are added. I'll quickly talk about those later. And then the other change is section 3450. It's the financial instrument update. And so it doesn't change anything for the municipalities, but there's two gigantic notes in the financial statements which just highlight financial instrument risks surrounding the municipality. These risks aren't necessarily new, but it's more of a reader beware, just so you know, this is some stuff that might be impacting the risk exposure related to the municipality. But to reiterate, it's nothing new. They've always been there historically. We're just putting a note there for everyone to read. So that being said, I'm going to quickly run through your audit report here. So we have audited the financial statements for Kneehill County. In our opinion, it's a clean audit opinion on your financial statements. It's the same opinion we give you guys every year. We conduct our audit in accordance to Canadian GAAP. Management is responsible for the preparation and fair presentation of these financial statements. Even though we assist you in creating the financial statements, it is ultimately management's responsibility to take ownership of these financial statements. Our objective as auditors is to obtain reasonable assurance that these financial statements are free from material misstatement. So to reiterate, it's a clean audit opinion. And then I'm just going to quickly run you guys through the statement of financial position. So the statement of financial position, this is a snapshot as at December 31st, which is your year end. So I'm just going to do a high level analysis from any major variances between 2023 and 2022. Before I go into this, I will show you guys that your 2022 column says restated. The reason why this says restated is because of section 3280. It's the asset retirement obligation. There was 3 different approaches that municipalities could take in terms of dealing with this specific standard. The approach that was used by Kneehill County and was suggested by Municipal Affairs was the modified retro approach. And when you use the modified retro approach, it means you effectively have to go back a year in time and restate the value under the same assumptions that you have for this year. And then I'll show you a big note that kind of goes with it to show you what the old values were when you issued financial statements last year versus what changed this year in the restated column. So anywhere where it says restated, it effectively means numbers on these pages have changed from what was issued last year. So just quickly going through here, there was changes in your cash from about $5 million. I'm not going to talk about those because I'll get through the statement of cash flows and it'll highlight all your changes for your cash. Your investments is up about $10 million, and that's because you guys purchased more GICs in the year. And then if you go to your accounts receivable, that's going to be up about $2 million from last year. Most of that is just related to your grants. And then going further down, you can see that there's this new item here, which is your asset retirement obligation. So there's not a lot of changes besides your other liabilities. They're all fairly consistent, but to reiterate, your asset retirement obligation is going to include future obligations related to the retirement of your landfill, gravel, and other capital assets that you guys have. And then there's your TCA. So your TCA is just going to be a change of your additions in the year, your disposals, and your amortization. And then your inventory for consumption, that's mostly just your gravel. And so your accumulated surplus at the end of the year is $188 million versus the $180 from last year. So your financial position, your net financial assets went from 57.5 to $66 million. So your financial position is looking better this year. And I'll talk more about your investments, but your investments are doing quite well. They're earning a return from about 1.75% to 6.05. And I believe this year you guys made about $3 million off of your investment income, which was pretty good. Okay. So I kind of do a similar approach with your statement of operations. So when I go through the statement of operations, I typically like to compare what you guys had budgeted in the year versus what actually happened. If there's any variances between what was budgeted in the year versus what actually happened, I'll then take a look at last year to see if those numbers are relatively comparative to what happened in the prior year. But if you look at your budgeted for 2023, you'll see that you had $27 million budgeted for operational revenue. Your actual revenue was 31.3. You can see that a major reason as to why that varies from your budget is you can see your investment income is quite significantly higher than what was budgeted, the 3.1 million, which is coming from your investment income in the year. And then going further down, you have your expenditures. So you had budgeted about 25.7 million in expenses. Actual expenditures in the year was 26.5. The big change there is happening in your transportation. Everything else is relatively consistent, and it's not too far off from where you guys were last year. It's just a little bit up. And then there's your government transfers or capital. So your government transfers or capital is just your capital grant revenue that you recognized in the year. So you had recognized about $2.6 million in capital grant revenue. So your excess of revenue over expenditures is the 7.4. So it takes your accumulated surplus at the beginning of the year at 180.5, 180.6 to $188 million. It's the same number that was on your balance sheet. So I'll quickly run through a statement of cash flows here. This is effectively your movement of all your cash in the year and kind of where you guys spent money. So our starting point for this is going to be the 7.4 million, which was our excess of revenue over expenditures that was on our statement of operations. And then you have items that were in your statement of operations which are not cash related. So we add them back, like amortization of $6 million. And then you had your net loss gain on disposal of TCA. And then once we get to the change in non-cash operating balances, these are literally just changes in your statement of financial position from current year to prior year. So if your taxes receivable decreased by $271,000, it means your taxes receivable is higher in 23 than it was in 2022 by exactly that amount. So accounts receivable is higher this year by 2.1 million. And then there's your ARO, which is just your accretion expense on your asset retirement obligation. And then there's your prepaid expenses, accounts payable, inventory for consumption, and then your deferred revenue changed by 1.1. And then there's capital assets purchased in the year of about 6.1 million. You guys had received proceeds on the disposal of TCA of about 480,000. And then this is the $9.6 million that you guys had reinvested into your investments. And then so your cash at the end of the year is $21.7 million. Of that $21.7 million, about $345,000 of that is restricted because it's sitting in deferred revenue, but it's still sitting as part of your cash balance. So your unrestricted cash that you currently have is the $21.4 million at the end of the year. So I'm going to show you a couple of the major changes in your significant accounting policy notes. I'm not going to read them, but I will highlight that they are there. So the first one that we talked about at the beginning was section 3450. This is the significant accounting policy related to your financial instruments. These aren't anything new for the municipality. It's just additional disclosure. It just talks about how things like cash, accounts receivable, investments are recorded. Nothing of significance. It's just a reader beware. This is information to show you how things are accounted for. And then show you the other one here. So here's the other big disclosure. This is your asset retirement obligation significant accounting policy. This effectively outlines what the asset retirement obligation is, how it's recorded and accounted for. And then I'll quickly run through you the note that's deeper into the financial statements, but this is just to show the reader effectively what the asset retirement obligation is. Does anyone have any questions what ARO or asset retirement obligations are? Is that pretty clear? Okay. There's these two additional notes here. This is just a change in accounting policy. I'm not going to talk about it again, but it's just additional disclosure to say, hey, this is new this year. We adopted section 3280, which is ARO. This is the reason why you have the restated columns. So in 2022, when we issued financial statements last year, these are what the original values were for each of these line items. And these are the adjustments that were made in order to record the asset retirement obligation for last year. And this is what the values are currently in the 2023 financial statements for the 2022 restated column. And then this is just to show you that you guys adopted section 3450, which is your financial instruments. So your cash and cash equivalents note, you have the $21.7 million in cash. You have an undrawn line of credit of $2.5 million. Here's the breakdown of the $345,000 that you have and your restricted cash that's sitting in deferred revenue. And then here's your investments. Just says that your investments are GICs and they bear interest rates that vary between 1.75 to 6.05 and mature between January 24 to July of 25th. So yeah, here's your deferred revenue. This is your opening balance in your deferred revenue. You guys had received $1.5 million, and then you had recognized about $2.6 million of your deferred revenue. So your ending balance is 4.5. So of your total $4.5 million in deferred revenue, approximately 4.2-ish is currently sitting in accounts receivable, and the remaining of that is currently sitting in cash. And so these are the grants that you currently have that are sitting in your deferred revenue. It's your MSI, your Canada Community Building Fund, and your Strategic Transportation Infrastructure Program. And these are the remaining dollar values to be spent. Here's your asset retirement obligation note. Talks about your landfill and your other non-landfill related items. And so to give you a quick rundown of how your asset retirement obligation works is your liability is effectively increasing in value every year of about 2.8%, which is indexed to inflation. It's based off of a CPI, an average CPI going back in time. So last year there was an accreted amount of about $180,000. In 23, it was 185. So you're just going to be taking the estimated total liability at the end of the year and then adding an extra 2.8% to increase that value and accrete it year over year until those liabilities are effectively paid down. Also under this standard, you're supposed to revisit your calculation surrounding your asset retirement obligation to see if there's any indicators or factors that might change your process of how you were going about your asset retirement obligation. So you can remember way back when COVID happened and our inflation was around 6 to 7%, if not higher. This inflation rate, for example, might change from 2.8% to 4% if you have some interesting year that pops up again for whatever reason. But this is effectively the liability, the estimated liability you are going to have as a municipality at some point in a future period when these capital assets are effectively retired. So I'll talk about your equity a little bit here. So as a municipality, your equity, which is effectively your net book value as a municipality, is broken up into 4 major categories. So there's going to be your equity in other non-financial assets, your equity in TCA, your reserves, and your unrestricted reserves. So Your equity in TCA, you can see, is effectively making up $107 million of your 188 total accumulated surplus. So most of the value in a municipality comes from its TCA. The other major piece is your reserves. So your reserves is money that management and councils effectively set aside for future projects. And so this is money that you've set aside that you will be spending money on at future points in time. So if you look at your financial assets, this is where I'm going to be jumping all over the place. But if you keep in mind the $68 million here, I'm just going to quickly jump back up to the statement of financial position. So you have $68 million sitting in reserves. Your net financial asset position is currently $66 million. So if you remove your asset retirement obligation, which is more of a long-term liability, you're approximately looking at about $72 million in liquid financial assets. It's effectively saying that your reserves are currently funded, which is a good sign. It shows that you're, as a municipality, you guys are healthy and you're managing your reserves appropriately. It's just a good idea to just be mindful of the liquidity of everything that you have as a municipality to make sure that you are going to be able to deal with your future expenditures, I should say. And I'm just going to jump back to your accumulated surplus note. Then there's your unrestricted reserves. This is effectively money that you have set aside that you can effectively do whatever you want with as a municipality. You could theoretically move a portion of this into reserves, or you could leave it as unrestricted, kind of as your emergency rainy day fund in case something happens and you need to deal with something that comes out of the ordinary. This 4.8 million isn't a rare or high balance. It's usually around the ballpark from what I've seen with other municipalities. So it is good to always have some form of money sitting in your unrestricted reserves. I won't talk too much more about that. There was one more note. So here is your debt limit note. So this is a fun little note because this is driven by the MGA. So there's an actual formula that is set out within the MGA that's to say your total debt limit is calculated using your operating revenue and multiplying it by 1.5, and that gets you your total debt limit. And so what that means is this is the maximum amount of debt that you should be hitting as a municipality. If for whatever reason as a municipality you need to go beyond the debt limit, you can do it, but you need to have approval through municipal affairs in order to do so. So your current debt limit, you can see, fluctuated from last year versus what it is this year. And literally the driver behind this is your operating revenue. So as your operating revenue changes, so too will your debt limit. So you don't actually have debt right now, but you do have this line that says total debt of $20 million. The reason why that $20 million is sitting here is the county has provided a loan guarantee to the town of Trochu to the potential senior supported living facility project. So even though you don't actually have a loan, this does impact your debt limit. So it leaves you with a remaining debt limit of about $27 million at the end of 2023. And then there's your debt servicing limit. So your debt servicing limit means this is the amount of debt that you can service in a year. And what that means is if you had like a loan and you were making principal and interest payments, that is effectively the amount of debt that you were servicing. So if you were paying $1 million in principal and interest payments a year on your debt, it would effectively say you would have $6.8 million in remaining debt servicing limit that you could field as a municipality. And this is also driven based off of your operating revenue as well, where you just take your total operating revenue and you multiply it by 0.25. And so that's the recommended amount set out by the MGA that a municipality should be having for total debt and how much you should be servicing in a year. So that's kind of my spiel. I don't really have much else to say, but if there's anything specific that you guys would like to address or talk about, I'm more than happy to field those questions.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there any questions from council? Councillor Christie?
Curiosity, with having a $20,000 debt showing, does that affect the interest rate we get on investments?
20 million?
Yeah, 20 million.
I don't know if I can answer that because I'm not a banker, lender. I don't know how that affects your interest rate, to be fair.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hogan, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can answer that. When we go to purchase investments, I don't believe that the amount of debt we have is weighing into the equation in any way. What we've adopted, pardon me, as soon as I start talking, okay, sorry about that. So what we've adopted over the last little bit is we've actually gone out when we get our investments, and we've had some financial institutions actually competing for them. So rather than just going out and seeing what is offered here, we've actually gone out to one entity and said, okay, here's your rate. And then we've taken that to another one and said, hey, can you beat this? And they have, and we keep going back and forth until one of them gives up. So we've done that on a few of our investments, and it's actually realized us to be able to get a little bit higher. Like, we're not talking full percentages higher, but you know, 2 or 0.3% makes a big difference on the amount of money we have invested. So we've been a bit more aggressive on that front too in the last 2 to 3 years.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there any other questions? We're letting you off easy today.
I appreciate that.
Well, I think that it's probably a result of a lot of hard work that's gone on before this actual presentation, not only on your part, but also our staff. And so,
Yeah, and kudos to Marika and Ashley, even though this is Ashley's first year with the municipality. She's on top of it. She's great to work with. Same with Marika. So you have a good team here. So I appreciate their help, and everyone's pretty easy to get information from. So
good.
thank you.
We really like to hear that, and we also kind of agree with you more than one way that we have some pretty good staff in the background. So,
Yeah.
So if there are no further questions, I'm going to say thank you, Mitchell, Mr. Kennedy, for being
Thanks.
here today on behalf of BDO, and certainly thank you for your presentation. We appreciate it very much.
Thanks.
And have a good rest of your day.
You too.
Thanks. You glossed over the clean audit part. Okay, I take that back. You did mention it.
I don't think we glossed over it. I think the acknowledgement of the fact is the clean audit is important, and so we are very grateful for that. And of course, that's, again, like I said, a result of a lot of work on the parts of a lot of people, so thank you very much.
It was a big year this year.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to say that the next item on our agenda would be 4.2, which is now dust suppression rates for 2024. So I guess, Mr. Zier, that's you?
Oh, yeah.
It's after this for the corporate services.
We haven't done the minutes.
That ends Marika's and Ashley's day.
Oh, okay.
Come back afterwards.
Okay. All right. Okay, Mr. Zier, whenever you're ready, I think we're relatively ready for you as well.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Good morning, council. So what I bring before you here is a request for decision for setting the dust suppression rates for 2024. So as council is aware, in policy 13.4, we have the obligation to set rates for both calcium chloride and spec crude every year. We receive those rates in March, so we set the product costs. We do the comparison on the previous year's rates and then look at what we're bringing forward to project for 2024. So you'll see in the overview here, there is a proposed reduction actually in both the rates for calcium chloride and spec crude. You don't see that normally in every day here, but I attribute that to better reporting, better review of our gravel inventories, better tracking of what actual amount of product we put down there. We did a pretty in-depth analysis on this year. You can see the basic overview of it on page 2 of the report here, but we're looking at about $1.90 for lineal meter for the product cost for calcium chloride. For the gravel cost, it's about $4.47 a lineal meter. And the equipment and labor for that spec crude, or so the calcium chloride is $3.63 a lineal meter, totaling up to $10 even per lineal meter for that, which is about $3.04 a foot. Moving to the spec crude, we reviewed and predicted it's the contractor equipment and product is about $41.76 per lineal meter. We kept the same gravel cost, $4.47, and we have the Kneehill County equipment labor at $9.77. That's because we do have to use both contractor and Kneehill County equipment to install the spec crude there. So we've come up to $56 a lineal meter for that. So that's projections for this year, and I'm looking forward to answering council's questions if they have any.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Zier. Are there any questions on the part of council? Okay, sorry. Councillor Cunningham and then Councillor Forbes.
Same question. So I'm excited to see it go down even a little bit. That's amazing. Just a couple of questions. Is it ever possible to get a overview of what other municipalities are charging? Because I did get that given to me by ratepayer last year. So it's just nice to see where we're sitting with other similar municipalities. And then I just wanted to clarify, so with the spec crude, that is an independent, like we have someone outside the county that takes care of that, is that correct?
That's correct. Through the chair, so we hire a contractor which has an actual distributor truck as well as supplying the crude oil. We handle the gravel installation, supply installation, and the grader work to actually install it. So.
And Councillor Forbes, you had a question?
No, because Councillor Cunningham stole it.
Somebody stole your thunder. Okay. All right, any other questions? If not, what would be the wish of council? Councillor McGee?
I want to thank staff for increasing the style in which they've been analyzing their business and doing the various things that has helped us find some savings for people. And so therefore, also I'd like to therefore make the motion that council approve the dust suppression rates as presented and direct administration to amend the master rates bylaw to include these rates as in the listed.
Okay, thank you for that. So the motion would be approving the $10 per meter for the 2 applications, full calcium chloride, the top spray of $5 a meter, and spec crude at $56 per meter. So we're aware of what we're voting on, clear on the intent. If there's no further questions, all those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Zier.
Thank you for that.
Appreciate you being here. In my mad rush to get to the BDO clean audit information, we omitted a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting. So, I'm always willing to take good news, and so I was just so anxious to get there. So we need to have a motion to approve the regular council meeting minutes from April 9th. Are there any errors or omissions in those minutes? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve. Councillor Cunningham.
I'll move the regular council meeting minutes of April 9th, 2024.
And thank you for that. If there are no questions, all those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. And thank you to my fellow council members for pointing out my haste. I appreciate that. Thank you. We are actually going to jump to corporate services stuff, so we're going to just adjust our agenda slightly to deal with the 6.2, or 6.1, I guess, which would be the 2023 audited financial statements, which we just had a good report on, but certainly let's do that. 6.1, 2023 audited financial statements. And welcome, Ms. Olson. And anytime you are ready.
Thank you. Good morning, Region Council. So I'm just here to wrap up after that presentation from BDO. So I'm presenting the 2023 audited financial statements for your approval and to address any additional questions that you may have for administration. Just to recap, these are the same financials you just reviewed, and they reflect a positive financial position for the county, as well as a clean audit opinion. You may note that there are some variances between these financials and the quarterly reports. I just wanted to point that out, that there are some differences, and this is every year, just due to some of the non-cash items that are included in our annual audited financial statements, being amortization and those changes for asset retirement obligations. So those are accounted for in the financial statements, but not included in those quarterly reports. So at this time, I will address any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there any questions for Ms. Olson on the 2023 audited financial statements? Because Mr. Kennedy was right in front of you, you're probably going to get a fairly clean ride here, so. Yeah. If there are no questions, what is the wish of council? Councilor Penner. Oh, sorry.
He already brought you in.
I'd like to thank you ladies for what you put forward, and like what Mitch said there, really appreciate the work that you do, and we do appreciate that too. So I'd make the motion that council accepts the 2023 audited financial statements as presented.
All right, thank you for that motion. So we have a motion to accept the 2023 audited financial statements as presented. Are there any discussion to that motion? Not seeing any, I'll ask the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. So thank you, Ms. Olson, and of course, our thanks from council to all the people who have a hand in the preparation of those financial statements and the day-to-day work in the background is very much appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you.
The next item I would like to deal with then would be the 2024 Tax Rate Bylaw, item 6.2 in our agenda. And welcome, Ms. Nyman.
Good morning.
And anytime you're ready.
Ready? Okay. Sorry, my mouse is not working to scroll up. One sec. There we go. Okay, so today I'm bringing the 2024 Tax Rate Bylaw to you. This report is intended to provide council with a summary of previous recommendations relating to the municipal taxes and requisitions. And then we move forward to the second and third reading of the 2024 Tax Rate Bylaw. This bylaw authorizes council to impose a tax in respect to a property in the municipality to raise revenue to be used toward the payment of the expenditures that are set out in the county's operating budget. On April 9th, we had a few motions that do affect this bylaw. We had motion 9024 that you approved the draw from revenue stabilization reserve in the amount of $220.24 to fund the increase of Kneehill housing. We approved the draw from reserve in the amount of $6,040, $286 to fund the 2023 under-levy related to Alberta School Fund. And we gave the first reading of the tax bylaw. And we directed us to talk to the province about the over under of 640,286 error in the education school fund. And you also move to reduce the property tax rate by 51,356 to maintain the legislative 5.1 non-res to res tax ratio. The bylaw reflects these changes. The 2024 operating capital budget was passed on December 12, 2023, council meeting, and requires that $25,644,991 be collected from ratepayers to maintain the municipality's operations. Administration is asking for second and third readings so we can prepare the 2024 tax and assessment notices. Does anybody have any questions on the
Okay, so,
bylaw?
questions, are there any questions? A lot of this we have seen previously in council meetings where we've given direction, particularly as relates to the Alberta School Fund under requisition of last year, which they came back and said, oops. We've had discussion around how we handled the increase in the Kneehill housing requisition, and we also had discussion on how we keep within the 5-to-1 ratio previous. So just for clarification, I guess, so we want our tax notices out by,
We would like to have them out early if possible, but last year it was June 15th that we had them all in the mail by.
okay, and as
so-
a reminder, taxes are due by?
October 31st,
there we go.
2024. Thank you.
Good, thank you for that. Are there any other questions related to the 2024 tax rate bylaw? We kind of understand the background to that and why we've made the decisions that we've made. Big part of what we've done is to try to relieve some of that requisition load, particularly related to the education school fund, that 640,000 and change. So any other further clarification, questions? Councillor Cunningham?
Did we receive anything back from the province saying if there's a chance that we're going to get that money back, or how that error occurred, and if it occurred to anybody else in the province, or we were just the special ones?
Thank you for that. Mr. Hogan, do you want to take that one?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, we've not received anything formal back. In an informal discussion with the with one of the assistant deputy ministers, they indicated that that they know of. They're not sure how it happened or that it happened to anybody else, but that's an informal conversation.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Penner?
So I just want to make it very clear to the ratepayers, because these are big numbers and sometimes they're not necessarily read correctly, but this is for the provincial government's error. It is $640,286 that we are talking about here.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Any other comments, discussion? Councillor Christie?
Just to comment on the increase on the farmland tax was to cover off the mitigation of ditch mowing and spraying, that we're changing that policy this year, so that cost is spread over the farmland tax.
Okay, thank you for that. So just clarification that the farmland tax increase is being driven by changes within the weed management and roadside weed control that we've made.
Yes.
Okay, and those are through recommendations, not only from council, but through Ag Service Board and the members that sit there. So, any other clarification or comment with relation to the 2024 tax rate bylaw? Okay, Councillor Christie.
If not, I move second reading to bylaw 1897, that being the bylaw for the 2024 tax rates.
Okay, thank you for that. And just before we vote on that, I think that one clarification that we really do need to make here is that even though we are dealing with the missed requisition from last year in terms of how we're handling that for ratepayers, there is a significant increase on the education tax requisition when you add that piece that was missed last year and the new piece that was added this year. So the ratepayers are gonna see big numbers
Yeah, going
on their
forward.
tax notices, and it's unfortunate, but there's only so much that we can do, so,
Yeah, that's out of our
especially on the
control.
requisition side, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's out of our control.
Okay, so we have a motion that we give second reading to bylaw 1897, that being a bylaw for the 2024 tax rates. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Deputy Reeve Whitstock.
I would like to make the motion for third reading of bylaw 1897, that being the bylaw for the 2024 tax rates.
Okay, so we have a motion to give third reading to bylaw 1897, the bylaw for the 2024 tax rates. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? And that is also carried unanimously. So thank you, Ms. Nyman, for all your work.
Thank you.
And for the presentation to council. And just know it's appreciated. We might not like the numbers, but still the work in the background and the assistance on particularly that recreation or requisition side from the province on education tax, that's very much appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is one that's very much fondly considered by the ratepayers in my division. And that's 2024 Trochu Recreation Area Special Tax, which is item 6.3 on our agenda. And again, welcome, Ms. Nyman, and whenever you're ready.
Okay, so this is the Trochu Recreation Area Special Tax. So council approves a yearly levy to be charged against properties within a given area as a recreation tax. This tax is collected and forwarded to the town of Trochu as payment at year end pursuant to the report to fund 50% of the costs to operate the Trochu pool facility. The original bylaw, which was 692, was approved by council after a vote of the people on April 14, 1972. So this has been around for a long time. So last year, our requisition was based on the budgeted amount of $65,000. We had levied we levied $61,000, but we had $4,000 left over from the 2022 year. The pool costs came in a bit over budget at $68,000, and this left $2,949.22 left over to be collected in this year. Administration is recommending that we level the same costs as last year, plus what we didn't collect. So that amount would be the $71,069. Yeah, so we're kind of just recommending that we kind of keep it the same. Was speaking with Trochu, they're not sure if costs are going to increase or not, so we thought we would play it safe and just budget for what it was last year, plus the over-under. Yeah, so we're requesting today that we give first, second consideration and third reading to this bylaw. Does anybody have any questions?
So I guess more a clarification than a question.
Okay.
So last year we collected through this special area tax, 61,000, and we had about $4,000, you said, carried over from the previous year.
Yeah, from 2022.
So we had about $65,000 to address the cost. It came in higher than that, which left us with a shortfall of just short of $3,000, so $29,4922. So what we're doing this year is we're taking that full amount that it cost us last year, plus we're adding that 29, so
Yeah.
that we're we're closer to what we're estimating the cost might be.
Yeah, that's what we think. I think it's going to be comparable. If we do over-collect, it will reflect on the 2025 year. We just wouldn't collect as much in that year if the costs do come in cheaper. But due to inflation and some of the costs of stuff going up, we wanted to play it safe and just kind of go with a little bit more than what they kind of budget at the 65, but go with what the costs were last year and then cover what we missed.
Right. And so at the end of the year, we will get an accounting, and what we will be doing is paying 50% of the costs.
Yeah,
to
yeah,
operate.
so we get a breakdown every year that shows what their costs were to operate, and then we cover 50.
Okay. Thank you for that. Any other questions? So I guess my question would be, what's the wish of council? Councilor Penner.
This is agreement that we've had for a long time, and it is strictly for the cost to operate, not cost to replace or anything. So I would make the motion that council provides first reading to bylaw 1899, that being the bylaw for the Trochu recreational area special tax.
Okay, thank you for that. So we have a motion. Any discussion to the motion? Not seeing any. So the motion is we give first reading to bylaw 1899, that being a bylaw for the 2024 Trochu recreation area special tax. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Deputy Reeve Whitstock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to give second reading, or move to give second reading to bylaw 1899, that being the bylaw for the 2024 Trochu Recreation Area Special Tax.
Thank you for that. We have a motion. Don't see any discussion, and the motion is we give second reading to bylaw 1899, that being a bylaw for the 2024 Trochu Recreation Special Area Special Tax. Ooh, that's a mouthful. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillor Forbes.
The council consideration to hold third reading to bylaw 1899.
Okay, thank you for that. So we have a motion to consider to hold third reading to bylaw 1899. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillor Christie.
I'd move third reading to be given to bylaw 1899.
Okay, thank you for that. So we have a motion that council give third reading to bylaw 1899, that being a bylaw for the 2024 Trochu Recreation Area Special Tax. Any discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? And that is also carried unanimously. So thank you again, Ms. Nyman. Appreciate the work that goes into these tax and levies and all the other things that we have to do. And so thank you very much for your assistance. All right. I'm going to suggest that in about 15 minutes we are going to recess so we can have all the things done and be in the community center for 10 o'clock. So what I would like to do is deal with 4.3, which is the Linden Agricultural Society water truck request. So welcome, Mr. Conklin.
Thank you very much.
And anytime you are ready.
Yeah. The Linden Agricultural Society has requested the use of Kneehill County's water truck and an operator to water the lawnmower racing track to mitigate dust and provide a safer and more enjoyable race and spectator setup. So Kneehill County's provided equipment and manpower for community events in the past, most recently the Three Hills race car show, in 2023. So the request will require the use of one of our water trucks and an operator So the estimated cost would be about $1,208 for the day. That'd be funded from the operating budget. So the recommended motion would be that council approve the use of a Kneehill County water truck and operator for Linden Sports Day.
Okay, thank you for that. Is there any conversation, discussion, questions related to that request? Councillor Forbes?
I just had a question. How much does the county budget a year to do these type of items for the community? I got asked that the other day.
Mr. Hogan?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we'd have to amalgamate that. We don't have that on our fingertips, but we could put that together and bring it back.
Okay, thank you for that. So is this a mud bog or just a, or just this?
I guess
dust
it depends if
control?
it's raining or not, or how much water we put out there, but.
So any further question or comment? Councillor Cunningham?
I think I hear the Reeve wanting to enter is what I'm hearing, so, yeah, let's put his name in, so, yeah. Yeah, Mudbug, yeah. No, I really appreciate all the work that our communities do to host these events, so I'll make the motion that council approve the use of a Kneehill County water truck and operator for the Linden Sports Day.
Okay, thank you for that. So we do have a motion to approve the use of the county water truck and provide an operator for that, for the Linden Sports Day. Any further discussion? Not seeing any, so all those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. And thank you, Mr. Conklin. All right. The next item on our agenda would be 5.11, requests from Badlands Recreation Development Corp. And
Delaying this.
I think we should probably hold that one, right? Yes. I imagine that Ms. Hazelton is preoccupied elsewhere.
It turns out our planning staff are currently prepping something. Yeah.
Our planning staff are busy. Imagine that, eh? All right. I think we can accommodate that. So we are going to go then on to community, council and committee reports. Wow. We're just moving right along.
See you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike. So, council and committee reports, and Mr. Christie, you're the first one that I see in here, which would be Community Futures Wildrose.
Our agenda wasn't long enough, so I added a whole bunch of pages. The main observation is they've been really, really busy on economic development, and we're coming to the end of our year where we're almost 200% above our goals. So they've done very, very well.
That's a good piece of news, that one. Yep. So thank you for that. Are there any questions for Councillor Christie on Community Futures Wildrose? I'm not seeing any. So this is when we give opportunity to Councillor McGee to report on the Kneehill Regional Partnership. And thank you for providing their annual report. But are there comments you would like to make to that?
Well, you're very welcome. Actually, we have great staff who kept me on top of that, and that was really helpful. So thank you, Carolyn, for keeping us organized. We have our year-end report. It is put together quite easily there. You can see a couple items we decided was decided that we can move forward or wait for more outcome for it. So we have done lots of great things. Our education pieces have been well received. I'm not sure what exactly to highlight, other than I am just very proud of all of our municipalities working so well together, and what we are doing for our residents as a region makes a huge difference. This program has proven to be worth our while, and it didn't take a lot of time and work, as we have now got into our swing, so to speak.
Okay. Any questions concerning the Kneehill Regional Partnership report? Councillor Cunningham.
I was just gonna ask, any exciting training opportunities coming up in the future that you know of?
Councillor McGee.
I don't have them on the top of my head, I can't remember, but yeah, we'll let you know as it gets ready, yep.
Thank you for that. Okay, any other comments, questions? I'm not seeing any. So I would entertain a motion to receive for information council and committee reports. Councillor Forbes?
So moved, sorry.
That's quite all right. So we have a motion to receive for information the council and committee reports as presented. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. And the next item on our agenda would be item 10, which is council follow-up action list. And that's been previously circulated with the package. Are there any questions related to those items? Councillor Forbes.
Not those particular items, but I did ask for the unsightly bylaw to come back. There was not a motion attached to it, so do I have to make that today in order for that to get on the books for the next Cal meeting?
Mr. Hogan or Mr. Gannon?
Thank you, through the chair. We're working on the document right now. We should have it ready for committee of the whole. We wanted to bring back recommendations of where we felt there was potential alignments within the documentation, as well as doing some comparables out in the community. So we're hoping to have it back to council at the next committee of the whole.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Councillor Forbes.
So because I understand how this all works, do I need to make that a motion? Because I thought that that's what was going to happen at the last Cal meeting. It did not, and I was told that I wasn't in a motion. So do I need to make a motion so it ends up on that meeting?
Mr. Hogan.
Councillor Forbes, if you feel that you want to make a motion to that, you're free to do so.
Then I will make the motion to attach that to the next Cal meeting, please.
Okay, so we have a motion from Councillor Forbes that the unsightly bylaw be added to the agenda for the next committee of the whole meeting, which would be May. Committee of the whole is on May 21st, 2024. Deputy Reeve Whitstock, comment?
Question for you, Mr. Gannon. Would that give you enough time to get the information together?
Thank you, through the chair. I feel that we'll have quite a bit of information to bring forward, and we're looking forward to the conversation, what council's additions could be for that. So I believe we'll have substantial amount of information to bring forward.
Okay, I just didn't want you to be in a position where you are unable to bring it forward, so thank you for the answer.
Okay. Thank you for that. Any further discussion to the motion? Not seeing any, so all those in favor? And that looks like it's carried unanimously. And thank you, Mr. Gannon, for the commitment. Any further discussion on any of the council action items? I'm not seeing any. Deputy Reeve Whitstock.
Well, if there are no other questions, I would move the council receive the information and the council follow-up action list as presented for information.
Okay, thank you for that. So we have a motion to receive for information the council follow-up action list as presented. All those in favor? And that is also carried unanimously. So at this point, I am going to recess the council meeting in chambers here, and we are going to relocate to the Three Hills Community Center, where we will be participating in a public hearing So that's the, to put my hands on it, I would say, anyway, we all know what it is for, redesignation, bylaw 1895 and 1896 to direct control districts 7 and 8. So we're in recess. We'll reconvene at the Three Hills Community Center shortly. The intent is by 10 a.m. So we're in recess. It is 3:39, and I am going to call the council meeting back to order. We are back to order. Hello. Thank you. Get my gavel out, bang, bang, bang. All right, we're back to order, 3:39. And we are going to address in our agenda
Mike's not on, is it? Oh, yeah, it is, never mind.
5.1.1, request from Badlands Recreation Development Corp. And Ms. Hazelton I don't know what you've been doing with your day today, but welcome back.
Thank you.
And anytime you are ready.
Okay, we've received a request from Badlands Recreation Development Corporation. James Zalazzo has been working very hard to move this project forward. The proposed project is within an approved area structure plan. As per his subdivision application and his development agreement, he is required to build and pave 5.88 miles of the access road from Highway 9 to the site. He has found it challenging to raise investor funds for the construction of the road, as well as the security required, since it is an asset that they won't own. So he has been in contact with different ministers to see what funding may be available to help facilitate this portion of the project. Several provincial ministries have mandate letters that require them to encourage economic development, and there are several funding streams available for this purpose. Minister Devin Dreeshen of Transportation and Economic Corridors arranged a meeting between the Assistant Deputy Minister Tom Liu and BMR in July of 2023. The perception obtained from this meeting was that the STIP LMI, which is Local Municipal Initiative Stream, would be the appropriate program for funding of this magnitude and scope. Mr. Liu advised that the LMI program eligible project costs for park access roads are funded as a grant of 75% province and 25% municipal, and suggested the developer could make an arrangement with the municipality to pay the municipality's 25% share. These conversations noted a potential cost of $15 million for this road project, so the ministers were aware of the prospective level of commitment on the table. The developer met with the county to share the outcome of this meeting. Further clarification regarding the potential amount of funding was requested by the municipality. On January 16, 2024, a virtual team meeting was held between Minister Dreeshen, representing Alberta Transportation, James Lazo, the developer, and Marshall Chalmers, who is also representing the developer. From this meeting, the developer understood that the province is agreeable to grant the funding requested and recommended the developer work with the municipality to submit the funding application as required. It should be noted that there are no deadlines to apply for funding under this program. However, in order to move this project forward, the developer would like the municipality to submit an application on their behalf in the near future. And these applications do have to be submitted by the municipality. This will allow them to proceed with next steps regarding the road, which includes obtaining some of the required geotechnical and engineering work. The proposed funding breakdown would be as follows. Total estimated project cost of $15 million. The developer would pay for any construction costs exceeding that amount. The province would provide a grant in the amount of $11.25 million, which is 75%. Badlands Recreation Development Corp agrees to provide $3.75 million to meet the 25% share, and the municipality agrees to submit an application for this funding on behalf of Badlands. Administration was of the opinion that a letter from the Reeve to Minister Dreeshen confirming this potential funding source, as well as assurance that it will not impact the municipality's ability to obtain grant funding through the normal process for municipal projects, would be in order. Administration believes that facilitating this process for an approved development is consistent with Council's economic development goals contained in the strategic plan. It is also a process that could be replicated with other developers if the opportunity arose. This belief is contingent on the county being able to participate with limited risk and no cost to the county beyond staff time. Again, there's currently no staffing implications, and we've given you options to consider there. And we have attached a draft letter for the Reeve to potentially sign if council is agreeable.
Putting words in my mouth again.
Sorry.
Okay, are there any questions, discussion on the part of council? Councilor Christie?
My question is, at the end of the day, we own the road, is that?
Correct.
And we would be responsible for it after it was built?
Correct.
Okay.
Councilor Forbes, you had a question?
I do. It's for Mike Zier, please. The question revolves around how much it costs to pave a road, because my understanding before, when we were doing our actual roads, it was about $1 million a mile. So why is 5.8 costing 15 million? Just for clarity, please.
Thank you. And through the chair, that is a typical estimate that's been used in the past. It really is site specific. This particular road in question is is a little more advanced as far as the amount of construction that's needed, the advancements. There's a couple sections of the roadway on it that actually need engineered solutions to actually deal with the limited right-of-way we have. So, yeah, I'd say that this number is fairly close to accurate on it. What our main concern with this was that, as Ms. Hazelton mentioned, that we don't get limited through any future STIP funding. We typically apply for STIP every year for the local road and bridge funding program. There's other programs such as the resource road that we may tie into. So as long as we have confirmation from our end that that's not at risk, the transportation is supportive of this.
Okay, Deputy Reeve Woodstock.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Question for you, Mr. Zier. Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be for you, but I'll pick on you today. The road, it will be engineered by their engineers. They will be paying the cost on their engineering. We will have our engineers looking at their drawings. And will our engineers also be on site when that road is being constructed?
So through the chair, there is a few different ways we can approach this. That's definitely the more preferred option. Typically, I mean, engineers are held by a code of conduct through their professional organizations. We should be able to trust whatever's coming back from the stamp, signed drawing. At the same time, we do see a little bit of opportunity for a second peer review on these sort of things, especially if something of a high magnitude such as this project. So I would recommend that we do have at least our engineers do a peer review on the design, periodic reviews on site as the construction occurs and that sort of thing. But that is a little ways down the road here, but as we get into that. Development agreements are required at the stage of this construction as well, with securities and all that sort of thing into play. This is kind of the first step to see if they do get the funding for that, then we would enter into those different agreements.
Supplemental, Deputy Reeve Woodstock.
Well, I thought about asking a supplemental, but I'm not gonna bother.
Okay.
I'll just maybe add to that a little bit if I may. So there is a portion that they have to do an engineered solution on. They can't get the extent of the right of way. They've already done some detailed engineering on that, and they have done some of the preliminary work, which has already been reviewed by our engineers. And so there has been a bit of back and forth already on these roads historically, and then they will have to do some environmental approvals. And so that can make the cost go a little bit higher depending on the number of crossings that they have. In this case, they would have a couple crossings that they would have to deal with. So some of that work has started, and we already have done some of that review, but we definitely need further, so.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Mr. Zier.
Thank you. Through this to the chair, Mr. Gannon just noted that perhaps I wasn't clear on my answer there as far as when this construction does occur, we will have site representation on there, as well as making sure that the standards for our roads are met, and all the way through up until final acceptance certificates are received on that road. So we will have county representation on that project.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Any further? Deputy Reeve Woodstock.
Okay, now that you've gone that far, our representation on that road will be paid for by us. Am I correct?
Well, I think, maybe Mr. Mahogan, do you have a, I know what I've done in the past. Sorry, through the chair, I know what I've recommended in the past. It is really, it's to our own benefit here, so we may be challenged on that. If we send the bill for our engineers as well as their engineers they're paying for. Like I say, I think it's to our benefit. In the past, there has been some cost sharing that I've gone through. I don't know if council's amenable to that or not, but even if it's 100% our cost, I think it's still a valuable second check on these road constructions like that.
I would agree.
Because we ultimately have ownership of that road and long-term maintenance requirements there. We want to make sure it's done properly, and we definitely want to protect our own interests, I would assume. Mr. Gannon.
Thank you, through the chair. I just want to add through my experience, most development in communities, if they're doing a large residential area, even though it's designed to a certain standard and you have those engineering drawings and you've actually approved those drawings, the quality assurance and quality control checks on how that work is being done and test factors in those need to be quantified and qualified before you get a certificate of acceptance for those conditions.
Okay, thank you for that. Any further discussion or questions? Mr. Hogan?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I guess I'll weigh in as well. The normal process is that engineer is acting on our behalf, looking after our interests, which means that the bill is going to us. They have their own engineer. If we accepted that, then they're paying for that, but we're accepting somebody who's not acting in our interest, right? So and I mean, their engineers, any engineer that's through a PEG or anything else has their professional standards that they have to meet and all that. But generally, the municipality will engage its own engineer to act as their agent in the review. And I think that's been supported by legal opinion, that if we're choosing to review engineering work they've already done, that's our choice and our cost.
Okay, thank you for that.
But it is, as Mr. Gannon said, it is the recommended approach because they're acting on our behalf, looking after our interests.
Councillor Forbes?
So I guess the thing that stands out for me is does this appear to the public that council would be in favor of this development? Because we came late to the table. Where are we in the process of this actually? Because I don't want to set us up for failure down the road where we're going to get thrown under the bus because we made a choice now that might affect us later. So I'm not sure if that's really a question. It's more of, can you just explain where we are in the queue of this for public consumption?
Sure. So this has been something that Council of Kneehill County has approved every step along the way. They have been appealed by some adjacent landowners every step along the way. We just got the decision for the environmental appeal, and they were successful. There are some amendments to some of the conditions that came out of that appeal, and I haven't had time. I just got it last week, and it's 215 pages. So I haven't had time to go through it all, but the appellants were not successful in demonstrating that it was going to impact or to that extent. And so, again, I'll refrain from giving additional information, but so they have just gotten that, and that is the last decision that I'm aware of that's been in the appeal. And so they will be tweaking some of the conditions. And again, once I go through the report, I can give a better understanding of what that might look like. So.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Hogan first, and then I'll come back to you, Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, to build on that. So from the counties, in terms of the county's process, there is an area structure plan for this site that's been approved. So that use has been approved, and I believe the subdivision has been approved.
Yep, and Drug Control District has been approved.
So for all intents and purposes, this is an approved development. There's still development permits to come in, but for all intents and purposes, it's an approved development being governed by an area structure plan.
Councillor Cunningham?
So we don't have the development agreement here, but if I'm understanding it correctly, this was not something that was agreed upon when this development agreement was made. He was just required to build and pave the road, but it wasn't that we were going to apply for funding for him, correct?
Oh, correct, yes.
Okay, okay.
And I think this is more recent opportunity. This was not something that was available to him earlier. And so he's been really pursuing that because the provincial government has allowed different levels of grant funding through different ministries for economic development purposes. And so he's been pursuing that piece on his own and came to us with this request, which again, as per the ministers, the municipality would have to apply on his behalf. So, and there would have to be an agreement in place between us and him if we were to apply for that on his behalf. So this is just kind of the first conversation here, and to see whether or not, in fact, the minister is agreeable that it's not going to impact other funding, and that this is truly 75% of the $15 million. And so we can, once we find that out, for sure, we can move forward one way or the other.
Deputy Reeve Whitstock.
And I do believe the agreement that we had in place is before anything else is built there, the road must be completed. So before anything happens there has to be a road, access has to be there.
Councillor Foltz.
So then when I read in your background here, he has found it challenging to raise investor funds. How is that a my problem?
It's for an asset that they won't own. He's not having issues raising funds for people, for memberships to do the track.
Right.
Or some of the development on the site, because those investors will have a share. But to raise the funds for a road that they will be the counties, that's where they have had trouble with, because it's not anything they own. It's a straight benefit and will be given to the county. So that's been the challenge.
Yes, Councillor Foltz.
So have we as a county done this for someone previously in the past? Just for, okay. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
Because if we've done, I'm just wondering if we're going to be setting a precedence, is what I'm wondering.
I'm going to come to you, Mr. Gannon, but before I do
Cargill.
that.
Cargill and Viterra were with grant funding. Yeah, that's right.
So before I go to you, Mr. Gannon, I guess just try to provide some clarity around what's being asked for here is, this is a requirement that we put on this project for Mr. Salazzo to go ahead. He's been unable to find the money through private investors. He has approached the project or approached the province about potential funding for him. They have seemed to have indicated that they would be willing to do that, but the line of funding that they've suggested, this STIP funding, is only available to municipalities.
Correct.
So he's asked us to partner in the application. He's applying the money that's needed, the 25%. None of that comes from us.
Correct.
And we also want to be sure that this does not impact our STIP funding that we might also be applying for projects that we want to.
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Gannon, you wanted to comment?
Yes, thank you through the chair. There are different communities and different organizations that look at different initiatives in order to help businesses move forward through levies or incentives, tax breaks, and different formulas. So this is just one of those opportunities that that just comes at different times from provincial bodies of different opportunities, and as they move economic development, sometimes that's the precursor in the move to this area. At one point, I believe funding was provided to some of the, if I'm corrected, to some of the ag roads that were constructed previously. So it's all on the provincial requirement of if they're moving forward with it or not, or if they're going to offer it. And as was stipulated earlier, we found that there was absolutely no risk to the municipality for funding or future projects. This was something that the Mr. Zalazo seeked out on his own and brought forward to us as an opportunity.
Go ahead.
I'm just going to clarify, I gave you misinformation when you asked if we'd done it previously. We did for Cargill and Viterra, those were grant fundings. I don't believe it was under STIP, I believe it was a different type of grant funding that we got. So the roads to those elevators were paved due to grant funding. That would have been in the early 2000s. They were approved in like late 90s. So it would have been in that ballpark that we had done that.
So those are grant applications that we facilitated? Or?
I believe they would have come through us. Yep.
Yeah, there was, to pick up on that, and it was a number of years ago, but there were grant funding streams specific to like resource roads, but like for specific to grain hauling roads and agriculture roads that were made use of. The exact nature of those agreements, we don't have at our fingertips. Those are many years ago. What we see here, to build on what Mr. Gannon said, is we have We have an approved development that we have an opportunity at low cost to us to foster getting off the ground and going, which is why we're recommending it. We do see it as something that is repeatable in the future. Of course, under that caveat that if this jeopardizes our funding for bridges and stuff like that, we're out, right? But if it doesn't, then this is something that could potentially be repeated with future developers as a way of getting their stuff off the ground, right? There will be, there's going to be some staff time, like Ms. Hazelton said. There's a number of other agreements that would have to be in place, but we would worry about that whether once we heard back that this was actually a possibility, because there is the whole. We don't necessarily want to be. We'd have to sort through, we talked a bit about engineering and who's building the road and how the funds transfer and all this other. There's a lot of stuff that we'd have to work through. It's a matter of, are we entertaining the direction or not? And if the province comes back and says this doesn't jeopardize your other funding, and we have the ability to, get an approved project up and running, then we see merit in that.
Okay, thank you for that. Any further questions? Councillor Folks? Yes.
I promise this will be my last question. So, on an administration level, just because I'm going to get this question, did Mr. Zalo, how do you say his name? Zalazlo, sorry, I apologize for saying your name incorrectly. What, and I don't mean this in a bad way, what proof did we get that Mr. Dreeshen said this? On an I'm just covering my bases, trust me.
So I think through you, Mr. Chair, that's the purpose of the motion we're looking to have council make.
Okay.
Is right now we're being told that they were open to that. The motion that we're recommending would authorize us to prepare a letter for the Reeve to sign, but we'd be sending forward looking for that formal confirmation.
So was it Mr. Zalazo who said this, or was it the actual minister? I would like clarity on that.
No, it was the applicant. That's why we're recommending that we get something formal from the province indicating that that's the case. Because if the province comes back and says, yeah, no, we're not entertaining this, and there's no more for us to do, right? If the province comes back and says, yes, this is a possibility, and it doesn't affect our other funding availabilities, then what would be back in front of council for additional conversations and saying, okay, we think this is worthwhile proceeding in if it gets this thing off the ground. Like I said, it's an approved development. When we look at the economics that come along with it, there's a bit of a return on investment that for facilitating this through staff time and getting that development constructed and built and getting it paying the taxes it's going to, that's a good return on investment. But caveat on those other protections. Right?
So really, the decision we're wanting to make today is just whether or not we want to write a letter to confirm the information that we're being presented with is actually true. And then, once we know that, then we'll be likely discussing whether we're actually going forward with making this application on his behalf, would be my assumption.
Through Mr. Chair, that'd be close. Really, you're not technically approving that we're going to do this, but you're kind of saying we're interested in pursuing this if it's a possibility, right? If council here today said, yeah, we don't care if it's a possibility, we're not interested in it, then we have an answer. Right?
Councillor Cunningham.
No, I appreciate your confirmation, Mr. Reeve, because that's what I was trying to get at too, that we're not going forward with this funding opportunity. We're just trying to find out from Minister Dreeshen whether this will impact us going forward. And I think is it available? And I think I caught maybe what Councillor Forbes was saying earlier, and no fault of your own, Barb, but we're always told in planning, we're never supposed to take into account the extent someone's gone to, the amount of money they've spent, or, any of those funding opportunities. So I just want to make it very clear that we're looking at this as a development, not to this specific person because of what the impact roads he's gone down, so to speak, to try to get it done. Just that we're looking at it as a development opportunity. So, yeah, okay, clarifies that for me, thanks.
Well, and I think also, just in terms of background, if this development was to go forward as proposed, we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars of development happening. And when we talk about economic development and the possibility of that happening here in Kneehill County, that kind of development, if we can facilitate it in a simple way by just agreeing to work with the applicant, spending no money on the part of the county, and protecting our own possibility to invest in our own infrastructure, why wouldn't we? If we're in favor of economic development, this is a pretty simple question for us to ask, I think. Because I mean, the proposed development that's here, that Mr. Zalazlo brought forward many, many, many years ago, regardless of when that happened, if it was to go forward, it is a massive project. And there would be pretty major economic development consequences to a development like that within Kneehill County. And it's a made in Kneehill County, money stays here, Kneehill County kind of project, so. Councillor Penner.
And we can have more discussion after this, and it's been great discussion around this. But I will put that the motion forward that council authorize the Reeve to send a letter to Minister Devon Dreeshen of Transportation and Economic Corridors confirming the funding opportunity and that there will be no impact to the municipal's ability to obtain grant funding through the normal grant application process for future municipal infrastructure projects. And I really look forward to his answer because that will, for the future with economic development, so.
Okay, thanks for that motion. Councillor Penner, is there any further discussion, questions, comment related to the motion and the intent of that motion? Anyone? It's as clear as mud. All right, if I see no further comment or discussion, I'm going to ask the question. All those in favor of the motion? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much, Ms. Hazelton. And before you run away from there, I think it's...
What now?
She's like, I'm out of here. I just think that it's important that we give you, just say thank you for the work that was done earlier today for the public hearing. And I just want to acknowledge not only yourself, but our management and the other staff involved, that we very much appreciate the work that went into that, and so thank you. Yeah, please do. Thank you.
So have we got anything for disposition of delegates?
No, I don't think so. Because we had the 2023 financial statement thing right afterward. So because I was asked the question, I'm just going to clarify. Because we did the 2023 audited financial statement approval motion after we had BDO here, we don't need to do anything as far as delegation disposition. Okay. And because the public hearing information is coming back to us at next council meeting, we really don't need to address that here today either. Wonderful. So if there's nothing else, if there is nothing else, I'm going to make the motion to adjourn at 4:08 p.m. And my thanks to everyone who was involved in today's meeting for your patience and your participation. We are adjourned.